I think a high-level summary of what is going on is Russian Game of Thrones, while strategically remaining Game of Thrones, now switched far more similar to Game of Go. And I think what's happening is that Prigozhin fairly successfully captures a few small cities. Kind of we already heard about Rostov. Seems like Voronezh is in play. And I will get back in next sheet to Ada. Excellent point. Why there is absolutely no resistance. It's quite interesting externalities going from here. But fundamentally, what's happening is I think Prigozhin is capturing as much easy territory as he can. And he has two choices, and we will I guess we will find out tomorrow what choice he will make, because that's the only choices in his position right now. So choice one, he will try to play game of Go, capture as much territory as possible, and these territories will be de facto under his controls, and that will be both a start of his negotiation position if Kremlin regime survives, and if he does not, that his first kingdom, because of course other warlords which are kind of plenty in Russia, kind of in this situation, they kind of everybody will start playing as their old game. So let's say Kadyrov will definitely start playing his own game if central Moscow power can even control kind of cities around Moscow. Now, more ambitious game plan would be he actually goes kind of all in, all cheats on the table, pun intended, and he will just march from the towns to Moscow. So, of course, in this case, if there is anybody at all still loyal to Putin, these people will try to stop him. But again, kind of it doesn't matter kind of other people like citizens or extremely popular bloggers on any camps. The only people that matter is people who control tanks, and the loyalty of these people, this is big freaking question mark, because, well, yeah, it's, I guess that's separate shit as well. So in this case, if Prigozhin marches to Moscow and he encounters same level of resistance he encounters before, that's it. He is fundamentally kind of, well, probably not yet king of all Russia, because it's not that easy, but he's definitely in extremely kind of awesome position, that because fundamentally, well, what next day Shoigu and Gerasimov kind of, like, I would say it would be Stalin time, I would say they would be shot, but knowing who Prigozhin is and what the situation is, I think they would be kind of dreaming kind of wet dreams about just being shot. I think what they will do to them will be kind of far more graphical and kind of YouTube restricted for kind of many years to come. But anyway, all the dogs of this war will be kind of carefully hanged in so many Hellraiser ways on Shoigu and Gerasimov. This will be the fall guys for the war. Kind of war is over. Prigozhin negotiate with all Western powers, kind of as new negotiation partner, and yeah, it's absolutely crazy town that I don't know, President Biden eventually, I don't know what, shakes hand of Prigozhin at some future event. So kind of totally crazy shit, but kind of in Game of Thrones, that's how kind of you win Game of Russia. So that interesting question, why there is no resistance, is actually has far more depth than it looks from the outside. So I will start with the following. So, well, thanks to City Council of San Francisco, it's very easy to understand life in many parts of Russia today. So they definitely did extremely well set up social experiment on streets of San Francisco. So imagine, let's say you go to Tenderloin and you met kind of a person, a few people whose systematic overuse of kind of drugs or alcohol kind of like decayed their bodies to extreme extent, decayed their brains. kind of they wander kind of around street aimlessly. So for like we can give city of San Francisco a small compliment. At very least, they don't give these people a government uniform, and they don't give these people guns. Although, kind of, I'm sure, kind of, as woke Taliban progresses in city of San Francisco, this will eventually happen, and they will get thermobaric parity with Putin's Russia. So, but nonetheless, in Putin-Russia, that exactly is what's happening. That if you go to typical deep Russian non-central city, exactly the type of cities Prigozhin is passing through right now, these people just kind of with virtue of having a uniform and a gun, and of course main reason would be not drugs, but it would be kind of a chronic consumption of alcohols in extremely unhealthy amounts. That would be your typical kind of local cop or local force enforcement department. And put yourself, if you manage, in kind of shoes and especially the brain of such person. What do you expect? He has like his kind of table regimental weapon, which is probably a kind of Makarov pistol, and he has his few comrades, whose military skill is kind of various tricks how to open a bottle of vodka. What they going to do with like 4 Tete pistols? They going to storm Prigozhin tanks, or heavens forbid, are they going to stop drinking for a week to stop Prigozhin tanks? So then, and most importantly, why? Like Putin is some sort of remote, kind of semi-god, semi-devil, living very far from them life and kind of bringing pretty much, not much besides kind of misery and poverty in their lives, but at least, kind of through his name, every evening, there are some, hallucinatory broadcasts that, kind of emit some sort of positive emotions for them, but that doesn't mean they're going to kind of go and storm Prigozhin tanks passing through the town. So in that's kind of the dial tone of deep Russia. So every people who I wouldn't even call them professional, but at least who were drinking at least twice less. All those people died in Ukrainian war a year ago. People who drank 75% less, they died in Ukrainian war 6 months ago. So the people who left, it's kind of, it's not in best and brightest even by tenderloin standards. So kind of Moscow being the center, of course, if there is anything at all left, it would be kind of like in kind of some sort of Moscow institutions. Then, of course, sort of tribal loyalty still plays very important part. That's why Kadyrov was so kind of aggressive, not very successful, but definitely aggressive, protecting his people so they don't just kind of grind it into mincemeat by Ukrainians. So Kadyrov has some kind of forces kind of that actually are fighting, but of course, kind of like in no way this force is going to fight to save Putin regime. The only thing these forces will fight for is to kind of extend dominion of kind of Chechen Republic. So why there is no resistance? They might be multiple explanations, not just the one I gave, but its situation is far more fluid and far more, I would say, open to all sort of possibilities. It's like multiple armed gangs, multiple warlords, multiple republics, or kind of a dual-sided civil war, or kind of a triple-sided civil war. Everything is possible, and kind of, I will only lead with that. There are some people in this world that kind of do not like the concept because it's definitely dangerous of nuclear armed Russia. And so therefore we might be very soon living in the world where you have 10 nuclear armed small Russians And well, I know, iodine tablets is $29.95 on Amazon, and delivery is just 1 week, so you still have time. For clarity, I will provide a little bit more context about the whole directions we seem to be going to with a dozen of nuclearly armed Russias. In my context would be the following. Well, why Ukrainian army counteroffensive is still not at the gates of Moscow when it's clear military loss, capitulation, regime change, one country defeats another, nuclear arms are well under control. Why this didn't happen? Well, because Ukrainians were never given F-16 until, they're still not given them, and not given them because the pilots are still training. It was done last second. Well, why Ukrainian counteroffensive only started a few weeks ago? Well, because they did not have enough tanks and heavy fighting vehicles in everything until very recently. Well, why Ukrainians did not get all that stuff until very recently? Well, because Ukrainians were only given like absolutely jocular amounts of help, just some man pads and javelins, and absolutely no real equipment during the most critical early phases of the war. And fundamentally, if not for absolutely mind-blowing personal heroics of Ukrainian people who just use this effectively man pads and some sort of absolutely obsolete garbage from Soviet warehouses, managed to turn the tide of war. So it's every single pattern is that everything that Ukraine needed, it eventually is getting, but it getting its year and a half later, and it getting everything in this piecemeal small amounts that do make a difference, and in some cases they do make a big difference. But every difference they make it always comes with a huge asterisks. Too little, too late. Strategic situation already changed. Is like why Ukrainian army has to now to blow through this extremely heavily entrenched Russian forces. Did Russian forces suddenly appear on whole south of Ukraine with instantly deployable trench system? No, because Western powers, in their deep wisdom, decided, let's give Russians 6 to 9 months to build these trenches. Why should we rapid fire arm Ukrainians and give them all weapons for victory? Let's make it fair game. Let's give Russians all the time they need to build this trench network. So, in other words, the Western power, I would say, tactical thinking was definitely okay, and it saved lots of lives. And in face of zero, it's any gift is precious, and I would say we're extremely thankful to all taxpayers around the world who funded every single bullet and every single tank sent to Ukraine. So first of all, it's the right deep thanks for sending anything at all. But if we now talk like grown-ups about strategic goals, about actually keeping these taxpayers safe in long term, then Western powers manage to basically do everything extremely slow, extremely inefficient, extremely not focused on the target goal, which should have been from day one, fast, rapid, decisive military defeat of Russia, regime change, make sure that control of nuclear weapons never falls into wrong hands, and then Putin gets some sort of deal, and maybe he will do time in tennis prison, but in no circumstances there is any sort of splintering of nuclear arsenals, and this is basically gentleman match. If Ukraine would have been given all this weapon that it's already got anyway, just 1.5 years later, Ukrainian could have done this just last summer, just like last summer Kharkov counteroffensive. They could just simply done it. There was simply zero strategic foresight and zero thought given to this because, I do not know what Western powers were thinking strategically, but practically they were effectively approaching this war as head in the sand approach and like, oh, Putin bombed a hospital with children. Well, let's give Ukraine a little bit more. Oh, Putin kind of attacked civilian population with rocket barrages. Oh, let's give Ukrainians Patriot system. So it's all knee-jerk reactions. It's all like reacting like an animal instead of using your head and thinking strategically. And here we are. It's kind of Ukraine just created enough stress and pressure on Putin-Russia that regime is now crumbling from inside. But instead of like special ops teams that go into exact right room at right building, takes out leadership and changes it. Now the whole building will come crashing down. Well, we'll see, 50-50. But if it does come crashing down, then instead of kind of orderly regime change under full control, you will have 10 nuclear-armed small Russians with Prigozhin versus Kadyrov versus Zolotov versus who knows what else. And kind of why this is happening? Well, Western power can blaze their own extremely deep and insightful leadership that they showed in Ukrainian war for the past year and a half. Kind of slow clap right here. Definitely by now, multiple reports of Putin forces blocking and putting roadblocks on multiple roads leading into Moscow. So, yeah, clearly, of all people, apparently Putin takes that threat of Moscow invasion pretty seriously.
Eventually, he opens his own restaurant and then another restaurant and another restaurant.
Wait, he opens this restaurant that's on a boat.
Yeah, and it becomes popular with the elite of newly democratic St. Petersburg, including the mayor and his then deputy, Vladimir Putin. He has George W. Bush and Laura Bush and Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell for dinner. You know, and if you go through old photos, you just see Prigozhin everywhere in the background at every banquet with his like freaky bald head.
I've seen the pictures. He's always kind of like serving something to whoever the most powerful person is, right?
Yeah, and he looks like that Addams Family character.
Oh, Uncle Fester.
Yeah, he's like Uncle Fester in the background, just like, roar.
It doesn't feel like a jokey situation at all because instability in the largest nuclear power in the world is scary. It's not like Prigozhin's guys are the good guys, quote unquote. They're like mercenaries, highly skilled, highly trained, and there's like infighting. Whether or not this is good for Ukraine will remain to be seen. However, it's no doubt at this point that Russia is in the middle of a civil war, essentially, because those are Russian troops on Russian soil attacking Russian troops. Moscow is about to go under lockdown. The mayor of Moscow already declared not martial war yet, not martial law yet, but he declared like staying home. Monday is off, so today started and like not a lot of the things are working. We'll see what happens by Monday, and nobody knows where Putin is. He didn't speak until like after that speech.
Interesting quote from I guess a Ukrainian foreign minister or something like that, said that the Russian army has gone from the second most powerful army in the world to the second most powerful army in Ukraine to now the second most powerful army in Russia. Good quote. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily win a war.
I guess a good outcome here would be that Putin gets replaced by yet another strongman, but this one uses the coup as an excuse to stop the war with Ukraine, at least for a while. The bad outcome would be we get 10 Russias, each with nukes, and then they start selling them off to survive. And we get massive nuclear proliferation around the world, which will have its own consequences. I guess that sort of nuclear proliferation is inevitable, but accelerating by another 10 or 20 years is not good. In the meantime, there is a possibility of a full-scale collapse of Russian army and morale and troops in the front lines against Ukraine. I'll bet you the Ukrainians are looking hard for weaknesses in the front line right now. I have a Twitter list here in case anyone is interested in following. At least there are early reports that Kadyrov's troops are headed to where Wagner is in the south, at Rostov, but I find that hard to believe. Why would Kadyrov get involved? Mostly he should just hand back in Chechnya and see what happens. If history is any guide, then peacetime behind-the-line soldiers are absolutely no match for a battle-hardened, trained paramilitary force, no matter what the numerical differences might be.
It looks like TASS reports, which is Russian state media, that head of Wagner, Prigozhin, talked to Lukashenko, the prime minister of Belarus, about potential truth or a way out where it will be safe for Wagner folks. And it looks like Prigozhin accepted, according to this report at least, and that the Wagner troops have paused towards Moscow and talk about de-escalation.
Who knows what's happening, but that strikes me as just bad game theory because Lukashenko basically works for Putin. Belarus is about as independent from Russia as Canada is from the United States. It's like imagine that a coup plotter from the United States would go hide in Canada. I don't think it would work very well. I don't think there's anyone on earth that could provide security guarantees to Prigozhin right now. If he doesn't finish this, he's dead. Wow, breaking news. Prigozhin's throwing in the towel and turning back. I don't know. It's only a matter of time before he falls out of a window, I guess. Let's see. It would be amazing jujitsu if that's a head fake and he's just rushing straight for the Kremlin, but I don't think that's what's going on.
ЧВК «Вагнер» хотели расформировать. Мы вышли 23 июня на марш справедливости. За сутки мы прошли, не доходя 200 километров до Москвы. За это время мы не пролили ни одной капли крови наших бойцов. Сейчас наступил тот момент, когда кровь может пролиться. Поэтому, понимая всю ответственность за то, что будет пролита русская кровь с одной из сторон, мы разворачиваем свои колонны и уходим в обратном направлении в полевые лагеря согласно плану.
This would be a great time for the NSA to hack Prigozhin's Telegram channel and to issue a message in his speech-synthesized voice using AI, ordering his troops to push ahead.
Absolutely. There's no strong confirmation here. This is from the Telegram channel with like 1 million subscribers, but this is currently the only source outside of the, Lukashenko saying that the agreement that they've reached, it sounds like him, but yeah, we don't have good voice detection technology yet to understand whether or not this is fake or not. Yeah, I don't know what guarantees or what answers to his request he could receive. I think if he gives up Roston-on-Don, which is a city of 1.1 million people and the central of the Southern Military Command, if they give this up, he's essentially dead. He could be dead regardless as well. But it does seem like there could be potentially a split in Russia now with those forces. Although, after a while, there could be a return of Russian military forces from Ukraine back in order to kind of stabilize the country, which potentially will be good for Ukraine.
Maybe Prigozhin or Wagner people get named as being in charge of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian army. That would be an outcome where he might survive. But even then, the transition to that point will look pretty shaky. I'm sure Putin is going to remove Shoigu and Gerasimov, mostly because they just ran anyway and they were useless. But if he replaces them with other loyalists, then Prigozhin is still a dead man walking. I'm sure the Wagner troops can't be too happy about this. Now they're going to get purged, shot, disappeared, whatever, because now they're having to ride their fates upon Prigozhin's deal without being able to fight for it. If there's a backstab here, they're all dead.
There's this Telegram channel called AP Wagner, which is affiliated with Wagner, but it's not like the Wagner main kind of press releases. And yeah, they're pretty much showing the same sentiment that like some of them want to quit, and the prospective politician that Prigozhin was is no longer prospective. So the sentiment that you're like highlighting definitely exists in the Telegram sphere. I'll call out something tangential but semi-related. Given that if somebody did hack, let's say, into the Telegram channel, that somebody has probably access to a bunch of compute. So if a voice sounds deepfaked, it may not in fact be deepfaked. It could be just compression of Telegram, because just logically, if somebody has the power to hack into something like a Telegram, they likely also have the power to generate, or they may already have voice models of all of those politicians and players, right? And those voice models will be essentially indistinguishable from the true ones.
I don't think we're dealing with deepfakes yet. Maybe the next coup, but I think it's a little too early for that kind of capability to be well used on the fly by the powers that be. I don't think the intelligence agencies are yet that competent or that on the ball, but I could be wrong.
Also, Max, thanks so much for the commentary, because now that Russian propaganda apparatus has completely disrupted American media, no one knows what to say in traditional news. I'm hearing that the roadblocks are simply trucks parked across the street, and that the checkpoints are cooperating with the Wagner group and waving them through.
The interesting thing about deepfakes is you don't have to deploy a deepfake to scatter doubts whether or not something is true. The mere presence of the technology being readily available already casts doubts on like every pretty much statement and recording.